The vastness of space was silent, but the tension was palpable as the Exaltron fleet glided into the solar system. These aliens, cold and calculating, had long since established their dominance across the galaxy, and Earth was just another insignificant world on their path to total control. From their perspective, humanity was a species barely out of its infancy, relying on outdated technologies and primitive strategies. The Zaltron saw Earth's defenses and scoffed how could such a backward species possibly resist them. Orbiting Earth, the defense stations were fully manned, though the mood inside was anything but hopeful. Screens flickered with images of the Exaltron fleet, rows upon rows of sleek, ominous warships casting shadows over the distant stars. The humans watched with grim determination, well aware of the enemy's superior firepower. On Earth's surface, military personnel prepared for the worst, and the world's leaders huddled together, issuing orders and monitoring the situation from underground bunkers. To the Exaltrons, the humans were foolish. Earth's reliance on kinetic weapons, massive railguns, missiles, and projectile-based systems was laughable in the face of the Exaltrons' energy-based technology. They had conquered planets whose defenses were far more advanced, and Earth's crude machinery posed little threat in their eyes. From the Exaltron command ship, their leader, Zortha, observed Earth's defenses with disdain. The planet would fall, just like all the others before it. Their only question was how long the humans would resist before they begged for mercy. Despite their grim outlook, humanity was not as unprepared as the Exaltrons believed. For decades, human intelligence agencies had monitored strange cosmic signals, giving Earth just enough time to anticipate an eventual extraterrestrial threat. Secret projects had been initiated, and the most brilliant minds had been hard at work developing new strategies and weapons. But still, as the Exaltrons drew closer, it was hard to shake the feeling of dread that gripped those in command. The humans might have been clever, but the technology gap seemed insurmountable. In one of Earth's many underground bunkers, Captain Elena Vasquez stood in front of a tactical screen, watching the Exaltron ships move closer to the planet. Her jaw was tight, and her hands gripped the edge of the console. Behind her, a team of engineers and strategists worked feverishly, tracking every movement the Exaltrons made. Elena had been in combat situations before, but nothing could have prepared her for this. The alien fleet seemed endless, a black swarm of death approaching her home planet. "Captain, their lead ship is hailing us," one of the communications officers reported, his voice barely hiding the fear that hung in the air. "Patch them through," Elena said, her voice calm, though her heart pounded in her chest. A hologram flickered to life in front of her, displaying the imposing figure of Zortha. His features were sharp and angular, his eyes cold and devoid of emotion. He stared at Elena as if she were a bug to be crushed underfoot. "People of Earth," Zortha began, his voice deep and commanding. "You have been deemed insignificant. Your defenses are laughable, your technology primitive. Surrender now and your extinction will be quick. Resist and you will suffer beyond your worst nightmares." Elena stared back at the alien commander, refusing to flinch. "This is Earth. We don't surrender." Zortha's lip curled in amusement. "Then you will be annihilated." The transmission cut off, leaving the humans in silence. Elena turned to her team, her expression hardening. "Get ready. It begins now." Across the planet, alarms blared and military units mobilized. In space, Earth's defense stations powered up their weapons, preparing for the inevitable onslaught. The first shots came from the Exaltrons, energy beams tearing through the void, aimed at Earth's defenses. The humans responded with railguns and missile systems, launching a volley of kinetic projectiles at the enemy fleet. As the battle began, it became immediately clear that the Exaltrons had the upper hand. Their energy weapons were devastating, cutting through Earth's defenses with ease. Several space stations were obliterated in the opening minutes of the fight. The Zaltrons moved like predators, systematically targeting Earth's key defense positions. But humanity fought back, refusing to give in. Railguns, though mocked by the Exaltrons for their primitive nature, were powerful and devastating in their own right. One of the human shots struck a smaller Zoltron ship, tearing through its hull and sending it spinning out of control. It was a small victory, but it was enough to remind the humans and the Exaltrons that this fight wasn't going to be as easy as they thought. Back in the bunker, Elena watched the battle unfold, her heart sinking as more of Earth's defenses were destroyed. But she refused to let fear overtake her. "Keep firing," she ordered. "We're not done yet." The Zoltrons, however, remained arrogant, convinced that their superior technology would win the day. What they didn't realize was that humanity had one last ace up their sleeve, something the Exaltrons couldn't have predicted. For now, though, the battle raged on, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance. The Exaltrons initiated their attack with ruthless precision. From their sleek black ships, beams of pure energy lashed out, obliterating Earth's orbital defenses. Space stations, once thought impenetrable by human standards, disintegrated in flashes of light, their debris scattering across the stars. The aliens had come to crush, to dominate, and in the first moments of the battle it seemed as though they were succeeding without effort. On the ground, military command centers scrambled to respond. Radar screens blinked furiously as Earth's few remaining space defenses continued to engage. Massive railguns, stationed on moon bases and in Earth's orbit, fired relentlessly. Kinetic slugs the size of buses tore through space at incredible speeds, aiming to pierce the Exaltron vessels. The projectiles struck the alien ships, but the Exaltron shields absorbed much of the impact, dispersing the kinetic energy harmlessly. To the Exaltrons, this fight was almost humorous, a primitive species throwing rocks at a fortress. However, humanity wasn't ready to roll over just yet. On Earth's surface, engineers and tactical teams were monitoring every detail of the battle, searching for any weakness. The aliens, for all their superior technology, hadn't fought humans before. They didn't understand the depth of human resourcefulness. "Elena, look at this," one of the engineers said, pointing to the screen where a Zoltron ship's energy signature was displayed. "Their shields, there's a pulse every 40 seconds. It's small, but there's a vulnerability right after the pulse." Elena nodded, eyes narrowing. "Get the timing to the railgun teams. We're hitting that gap." Orders were sent out quickly, and the human forces adjusted their strategy. Instead of firing haphazardly, they now timed their shots with precision, aiming for the brief window when the Exaltron shields were at their weakest. The next volley from Earth's guns was different. One of the slugs, traveling at thousands of miles per hour, struck a Zoltron cruiser during the shield's pulse. The slug tore through the ship's hull, exploding deep inside its core. For the first time, a Zoltron ship was obliterated, reduced to a field of flaming debris. The humans on the ground erupted in cheers, but the Exaltrons were far from defeated. If anything, the destruction of one of their ships enraged them. Zortha watched the screens aboard his command vessel, his expression hardening. The humans had been underestimated, and that was a mistake he would not make again. "Send in the destroyers," he commanded, his voice like ice. The Zoltron destroyers, massive ships bristling with weapons, moved into formation. These were not the light cruisers that had been leading the charge. The destroyers were designed to wipe out planetary defenses with extreme prejudice. They unleashed a wave of energy beams that targeted Earth's railgun installations. One by one, the installations were struck, their locations precise thanks to the Exaltron's advanced targeting systems. Several ground-based railguns were destroyed in an instant, leaving massive craters in their place. Despite these losses, Earth's forces didn't falter. Another engineer in Elena's command bunker spoke up. "Captain, we've got a clear path to target the lead destroyer. If we hit them now, we could take it out before they fully engage." "Do it," Elena ordered, her voice firm. Time was running out, and they needed every advantage they could muster. The railguns fired again, this time targeting the lead destroyer. It was larger and better armored than the cruisers, but the humans had their strategy in place. The slug hit the destroyer right after its shield pulse, tearing through its midsection. The ship listed for a moment before exploding in a brilliant flash. Another Zoltron ship, down. But the Exaltrons were relentless. For every ship the humans managed to destroy, two more took its place. The alien fleet continued to push forward, their weapons devastating Earth's orbital defenses and cutting through human ranks. The situation seemed desperate, and the losses on Earth's side were mounting. Millions of lives were at stake, and the humans knew that even their best efforts might not be enough. Amidst the chaos, the true strength of humanity began to show. Tacticians and engineers, working tirelessly behind the scenes, started to think outside the box. They began using the debris from destroyed space stations as makeshift shields, positioning them in key places to absorb Zoltron fire. It was an unconventional move, but one that bought the remaining railguns and missile systems enough time to keep firing. The Zoltrons, for all their technology, hadn't anticipated this level of creativity. Their strategies, while effective against countless other species, were rigid. The humans, however, thrived in chaos. It was in these moments of desperation that humanity's ingenuity and adaptability came to the forefront. The Exaltrons, while advanced, were predictable, and the humans were slowly beginning to exploit that. Still, the losses were staggering. Earth's defenses were crumbling under the relentless assault. Elena watched as one of the last space stations was destroyed, its fiery remains scattering across the sky. She clenched her fists, knowing that they were running out of time. The Zoltrons hadn't sent their full forces yet, and if humanity was going to survive, they needed to strike back harder than ever before. Then, in the distance, the skies over Earth began to darken. For a moment, it seemed like more Exaltron ships were coming, but it wasn't an enemy. The massive cannons of Terra, long hidden and kept secret from even the highest levels of government, were finally ready to fire. The guns of Terra, colossal ground-based railguns capable of launching projectiles the size of skyscrapers, powered up with a hum that reverberated across the planet. These weapons, hidden deep in the Earth's crust and positioned in remote locations, had been Earth's final trump card. And now, with the Exaltrons closing in, it was time to reveal them. "Prepare to fire the guns of Terra," Elena ordered, her voice filled with a new sense of determination. Across the planet, the massive guns turned towards the sky, locking onto the Exaltron fleet. The power they generated was immense, and for a brief moment the air around them seemed to shimmer with energy. The Exaltrons, still confident in their dominance, had no idea what was coming next. The first of the guns of Terra fired. The sound was deafening, a thunderous roar that echoed across continents. The projectile, larger than anything humanity had ever launched, shot towards the Exaltron fleet at unimaginable speed. The first shot from the guns of Terra ripped through the atmosphere and soared into the black void of space. In an instant, it struck the Exaltron capital ship, a vessel so large it dwarfed even the biggest of Earth's space stations. The projectile, moving at incredible speed, penetrated the ship's shield during its pulse and tore through the hull like it was paper. For a moment there was silence as the sheer magnitude of the shot registered with both human and alien forces. Then, in a fiery explosion, the Exaltron ship disintegrated. On the ground, humanity watched with awe. For so long, they had been the underdogs, facing an enemy whose technological superiority seemed insurmountable. But in that moment, everything changed. The guns of Terra had shown that even the mightiest of the Exaltron fleet could be brought down with human ingenuity and a willingness to fight until the bitter end. In the Exaltron command ship, Zortha stared at the destruction of his capital vessel, disbelief evident on his alien features. This was not how the invasion was supposed to go. Earth was supposed to fall easily, just like the countless other planets they had conquered. Yet here they were, watching as their most powerful ships were blown apart by the very species they had dismissed as primitive. "This is impossible," Zortha growled, his voice cold and hard. "How can these humans possess such weapons?" The Zoltron fleet, still massive and dangerous, began to pull back slightly, regrouping as they reassessed the situation. What they had initially seen as an easy victory was now turning into a real fight. The human forces had been relentless, striking in ways the Exaltrons hadn't anticipated. And now, with the guns of Terra in play, the balance of power had shifted. Back on Earth, Elena stood in the command bunker, her face illuminated by the glow of the battle screens. She watched the debris from the destroyed capital ship float in space, a grim smile playing on her lips. They had done it. They had proven that humans weren't as defenseless as the Exaltrons believed. But the battle was far from over. "Prepare to fire again," Elena ordered, her voice steady. "Let's keep the pressure on them." The engineers and tactical teams worked quickly, recalibrating the massive guns for the next shot. At the same time, behind the scenes, Earth's brightest minds were working on another angle. They had been studying the Exaltron ships for weeks now, ever since the first signals indicated an incoming invasion. And they had discovered something interesting, something they hoped would turn the tide even further. In an underground research facility, a team of engineers was working on repurposing the alien technology they had salvaged from a crash site years before. This tech, though still mostly a mystery, had revealed a few key insights into how the Exaltron ships operated. Most importantly, it had shown them that the Exaltrons were vulnerable to certain types of interference. Using this knowledge, the engineers had developed a plan to hack into the Exaltron systems and disrupt their communications and targeting systems. "Are we ready?" asked Dr. Malik, the head of the research team. "We are," replied one of the lead engineers. "We've managed to interface with their tech. It's crude, but it should work." "Good. Send the signal," Malik ordered. Across the battlefield, deep within the Exaltron ships, the human hack took effect. It wasn't a perfect system, but it didn't need to be. The Exaltrons, so confident in their superiority, had never anticipated that humans would be able to turn their own technology against them. Suddenly, the targeting systems on several Exaltron ships went haywire. Their weapons misfired and their shields flickered unpredictably. Confusion spread through the Exaltron fleet as they struggled to regain control of their ships. In the chaos, the guns of Terra fired again. Another Exaltron cruiser, its shield still malfunctioning from the hack, was obliterated in a single shot. More debris filled the void of space as humanity's counteroffensive began to take its toll. Sortha, now seething with rage, barked orders to his subordinates. "Fix the systems. How is this happening?" But the Exaltrons, for all their advanced technology, were not used to fighting opponents who could think on their feet and adapt so quickly. Their rigid military structure and reliance on their superior technology were being turned against them. On Earth, the mood was cautiously optimistic. The Exaltrons were still a formidable force, but the tide was beginning to turn. Human engineers and military personnel worked around the clock, using every scrap of information and every piece of alien tech they could get their hands on. The ingenuity of Earth's best and brightest was on full display as they continued to tweak their systems, finding new ways to exploit the weaknesses in the Exaltron fleet. One of the engineers, a young woman named Nia, sat in front of a complex array of monitors, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She was working on a new algorithm to further disrupt the Exaltron targeting systems. "If we can just get this one more signal through," she muttered to herself, "we might be able to disable their main communications relay." Beside her, Malik watched anxiously. "Are you sure it'll work?" Nia didn't look up. "I'm sure. The Exaltrons aren't as perfect as they think they are." A few minutes later, the signal was sent. In the Exaltron fleet, one of the central communication relays flickered and then went dark. The alien fleet was now effectively cut off from each other, their coordination disrupted. The human forces seized the moment, launching a series of coordinated strikes on the Exaltron ships. As the guns of Terra continued to fire, Earth's remaining space forces, bolstered by their new understanding of the Exaltron weaknesses, began to push the alien fleet back. The once overwhelming invasion force was now struggling to maintain its foothold. Humanity had shown that, while they might not have the same technological advantages as the Exaltrons, they had something far more valuable: the ability to adapt, to learn, and to fight back with everything they had. But the victory was not without cost. Even as they pushed the Exaltrons back, Earth's cities were under siege. Alien drones and ground forces had begun their attack on the surface, causing widespread destruction. Millions were already dead, and countless more were in danger. The human forces were battered and exhausted, but they continued to fight with a determination that surprised even themselves. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time since the invasion began, there was hope. The Exultrons had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. As the human forces prepared for the next wave of attacks, one thing was clear: Earth would not go down without a fight. The Exultron fleet, once so confident in their inevitable victory, now found themselves on the defensive. The guns of Terra had taken out several of their largest ships, and the human forces, once thought insignificant, had turned their own technology against them. But Zortha wasn't finished yet. In a final act of desperation, he ordered a full-scale invasion of Earth's surface. If they couldn't conquer from above, they would crush humanity from the ground. Massive troop carriers descended from the Exultron ships, entering Earth's atmosphere with a fiery glow. From them emerged legions of heavily armed alien soldiers, along with towering war machines designed for planetary conquest. They began their assault on Earth's major cities, targeting civilians as well as military installations. Entire city blocks were leveled in minutes, and Earth's defense forces, already stretched thin, struggled to hold the line. But the humans were not about to surrender. Across the planet, people of all backgrounds, soldiers, civilians, scientists, and engineers banded together in an unprecedented show of unity. Governments that had once been divided by politics and borders now coordinated their efforts as one global force. Civilians took up arms, creating makeshift militias to defend their homes, while engineers repurposed anything they could to aid the fight. Factories that once made cars were now producing weapons, and schools were turned into emergency command centers. In one such command center, in the ruins of a city that had once been a major metropolis, Elena stood with a group of exhausted but determined soldiers and engineers. They had been fighting non-stop for days, but there was no time for rest. The Exultron forces were advancing rapidly, and if they didn't find a way to stop them soon, humanity's victory in space would be meaningless. Status report, Elena demanded, wiping the sweat from her brow. Not good, one of the engineers replied. They've got tanks and air support, and our ground forces are barely holding them off. We're running out of time. Elena stared at the tactical map in front of her. These Ultrons were closing in, and it felt like there was nothing they could do to stop them. But then, an idea struck her. She looked over at the senior engineer, Nia, who had been instrumental in the hacking of the Exultron systems earlier. Nia, can we repurpose any of the alien tech we've captured on the ground? Nia's eyes widened as she quickly began running through the possibilities. We've got some of their drones and communication relays from the wreckage. It's not much, but if we can figure out how to control them, we might be able to turn their own machines against them. Then do it, Elena said, her voice filled with a new sense of urgency. This is our last chance. The engineers worked frantically, racing against time as the Exultrons continued their assault. Using what little they had learned from the alien tech, Nia and her team managed to override the control systems of several Zultron drones. Soon they had a small fleet of alien war machines under their command. It wasn't much, but it was enough. On the battlefield, the human forces were being pushed back, retreating deeper into the city. Zultron soldiers marched forward, their war machines tearing through buildings as they advanced. But then, something unexpected happened. The Exultron war machines stopped, hesitated for a moment, and then turned on their own forces. The aliens were caught completely off guard as their own drones opened fire on them. Elena, watching from the command center, felt a surge of hope. It's working, she shouted. The tide of the ground battle began to turn. With their own war machines now fighting against them, the Exultrons found themselves in disarray. The humans seized the opportunity, launching a counterattack. Soldiers who had been on the verge of collapse now fought with renewed vigor, inspired by the sight of alien machines fighting alongside them. But even as the humans began to push the Exultron forces back, the situation remained dire. The alien invaders still had the upper hand in terms of numbers and firepower, and Earth's cities were being reduced to rubble. Billions of lives had already been lost, and countless more were in jeopardy. It was then that the decision was made to launch the final shot from the guns of Terra. This time, the target wasn't just another Zultron ship, it was their command vessel, the heart of their fleet, where Zortha himself commanded the invasion. Taking out this ship would cripple the Exaltron forces once and for all, but there was a problem: the ship's shields were stronger than anything they had encountered before, and the guns of Terra alone might not be enough. But humanity had a plan. Using the alien technology they had hacked, Earth scientists had found a way to temporarily disable the command ship's shields. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it was their only hope. Alina, now overseeing the final stages of the battle, coordinated the effort. On her order, the human forces sent out a signal that disrupted the command ship's shield, creating a brief window of vulnerability. At that exact moment, the guns of Terra fired. The projectile shot through the atmosphere and into space, streaking toward the Exaltron command ship. Zortha, realizing what was happening, ordered his crew to try and raise the shields, but it was too late. The shot from the guns of Terra hit the ship dead center, piercing its hull and igniting a chain reaction. In a brilliant explosion, the command ship was destroyed, taking with it the Exaltron leadership and much of their remaining fleet. Back on Earth, the Exaltron ground forces, now leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat. Without the coordination of their command ship, the invasion collapsed. One by one, the alien war machines shut down, and the remaining Zaltron soldiers were either captured or killed. As the smoke cleared, humanity stood victorious. The cost had been immense. Cities lay in ruins, millions were dead, and Earth's infrastructure was shattered. But the planet was free. Against all odds, humanity had survived. In the aftermath, Elena stood on a ridge overlooking what was left of the city. She had fought in countless battles before, but nothing had been as devastating as this. And yet, despite the destruction around her, she felt a deep sense of pride. They had faced an enemy that thought them weak, thought them incapable of victory, and they had proven them wrong. Around the world, similar scenes played out. People emerged from bunkers, shell-shocked and exhausted, but filled with hope. Humanity had done what so many had thought impossible. They had stood up to an overwhelming force and won. As the planet began to rebuild, one message resonated clearly: no matter how advanced or powerful the enemy, humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and will to survive could never be underestimated.